Hello, welcome to HighRoad U. We're delighted that you are taking your valuable time to join us. We welcome you to Subscriber List Decision Making Framework with John Brandt from HighRoad Solution. If you are currently dialed into the telephone conference, remember this is a toll number, but if you have a voice over IP connection on your computer, please hang up and click Mic and Speakers under the audio panel on the right side of your screen. Supporting materials for today's presentation will be made available to print or download. You may access materials following the webinar. Presenters encourage questions, so please ask when prompted by clicking the chat panel and typing in your question. Our content leaders will try and incorporate in your questions during the session, but will address them during the Q&A portion at the end of the session. Please remember that HighRoad Solution is an authorized provider of CAE credits. You are only eligible to report this webinar for CAE credit if you attend live and for the entire session. Our session is eligible for 1 CAE credit. Today's speaker is John Brandt, Sales Director of HighRoad Solutions. John has over 10 years of marketing experience and enjoys working with clients to help them build their marketing strategies and aiding them in achieving and exceeding their goals. Without further ado, Mr. Brandt, please begin.
Thank you, Jennifer. And again, thank you everyone for joining us here today. If you're listening to this live, otherwise, if you're listening to a recording of this, just as relevant to send me questions after this session. So again, I'd love to be able to help you guys with any strategy questions you may have. You can see there on the bottom of my screen, there's my email address, jbrandt@highroadsolutions.com. Again, feel free to hit me up anytime if you have questions about any strategic stuff that you're doing for your digital marketing programs. Also, follow me on Twitter at johnbrandt25. I typically am tweeting pretty actively, especially when I'm at trade shows, or if I find an article that I really think resonates for people's digital marketing strategies, I will tweet that as well. So usually some pretty good content kind of flows through there. Okay, so let's get started. So today we're talking about how to essentially be more relevant, how to really build lists to be more targeted. You guys may be doing something similar to the spray and pray, or maybe you have done that in the past, or maybe you're trying to get leadership to understand that the spray and pray method is not a strategy. Really isn't. It is kind of the old Wild West type of strategy that when I first did email marketing, that's exactly what we did. We just sent everything that we had to everyone, and we had conversion rates that were horrible. We had open rates and click-through rates that were just really low. We'd have like 1%, and you know, I talked to our leadership team, and they'd be like, well, we need an extra $50,000 this month, so let's just email more. So it was never a focus on trying to be more relevant so we can get that conversion rate up a little bit. It was always about volume. And it didn't work then, and it definitely does not work now. So we'll talk a little bit about how to be more relevant and essentially rebuild trust between you and your constituents, that what they receive from you is what they're asking for. And if that's the case, then you're going to see your open rates, your click-through rates, your conversion rates all climbing up and to the right. So this is kind of what I used to feel like, why doesn't this work? Can't we just buy attention? Can't we just buy more lists? Or can't we just send more email and we'll be getting more people's attention? We know that that doesn't work. Everyone knows that doesn't work. I mean, think about it personally speaking. When you receive mountains of email from a specific provider, what percentage of that email that you get, if you don't unsubscribe, do you actually look at? Do you actually review? I mean, if you're The Gap or Banana Republic or a lot of these e-commerce brands that are sending 5, 6 messages a day, and you're in the buying mode, then maybe you open up 1 out of 5. But in the world that we live in here, in associations, where we are trying to get people to read our content, and engage with us, that type of mentality doesn't work because someone has to literally invest time out of their day to open your email, read the call to action, click through, and maybe read that article that might be specific to them. And they don't have time to, waste on that sort of practice. It's kind of like crying wolf. You send them so many messages, and they open it, and then they don't find any value in that. How long does it take before that person stops opening your messages because they just don't trust you anymore? So let's talk a little bit about. So we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute, but let's talk first about personalization. So personalization isn't really a list building strategy, but I do talk to a lot of people that talk about, well, this is our list building strategy, or this is how we intend to be more relevant. So I want to incorporate personalization because personalization is good, but it's not a list building strategy. But let's talk a little bit about what in this might still be a good practice. So the salutation in your email, it's not a bad thing. Some people don't use that. Some people do. It really doesn't personalize or warm up your email that much. But if you really feel strongly that there's a message at the top that you want to incorporate, then it's not bad. But what is probably good personalization, or things that really does make a difference, is things that you might know about your subscriber that might be beneficial for them to actually know. So including personalization tags that are tied to your database that have relevant information for that person. So if you're a CPA society and you have CPE credits, or if you're a bar association and you have CLE credits, or just kind of warming up the email to give it that one-on-one type of connection where you can say, hey, John Brandt, here's the firm that you work at, blah, 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 and just kind of give it that personal touch. You can easily incorporate those things with personalization, and then it feels more like a one-to-one communication. Just doing hi John at the top doesn't really feel personal, but if you can do other things, and I always make the example that I'm a big Delta guy, so I go and fly Delta whenever I can. So when they send me an email, typically I open all of their emails because I want to see how many sky miles I have. So that is one way that they've personalized their emails. Even if the email's not about, hey John, here's how many sky miles you have, that is something that will kind of inspire me to open the email, and then now I have the potential to see that call to action and potentially click on whatever the CTA is for that. Also, a couple things that we want to make sure that we totally avoid. Name in the subject line. You probably have received some emails like this. That's not good personalization. That's actually a little creepy. But there are ways to actually put personalization in the subject line. There was one client that I worked for or worked with a couple of years back that was looking at doing something that they knew about the actual subscriber and putting that in the subject line. So they had a big trade show, and they wanted to send out an in-event communication to people to inspire them to open the email, be able to put the call to action out in front of them, and they knew basically from their subscriber list who the person was most interested in seeing at the trade show. So they had a number of speakers, surveys had been done to be able to determine who they really wanted to see at the event. So they put a personalization flag in the subject line that allowed them to say, hey, come by and see so-and-so. So that personalization flag was in the subject line at the event. So they actually had over 75% open rate on that because it was something that was relevant to that subscriber, and it was something that did inspire them to open the email. Now, personalization can be bad. I got this the other day. Personalization gone bad. I love Target, so I'm not ripping on Target, but this is an example of an email program somebody thought up that would, I guess, be a good idea for some instances. I went to Target this past year and got my new headshots done for HighRoad. And last week or the week before, I get this email saying, great photo, great mug, great price, and it was my headshot on a ceramic mug, and I could order now for just $10. And I just had to chuckle. I showed it to my wife. I was like, hey, I found your new Christmas present. This is what I'm going to get. You can walk around the office with a big picture of me on your mug. Or maybe I should just buy these for the next trade show that HighRoad does, and I can hand them out at the booth. I mean, I guess if it was a family picture that I had done at Portrait Studio at Target, that would probably be a pretty cool present. But again, personalization kind of gone wrong. So think about, as you personalize, all of the potential issues that might arise for putting content within your email. And hey, it was a nice looking email. Okay, so let's get off of personalization for a little bit. And let's actually talk about lists. Now, small lists perform better than big lists. It's just a fact, and it's not a big surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone out there that small lists, more targeted lists, more relevant lists do better than when you send an email to a one-size-fits-all email to everyone. So let's talk about some basic list strategies that will help you build more targeted small lists that will perform better for you. So from the beginning, let's talk about onboarding new members. So how many of you out there actually do an onboarding strategy? Some of you may just send a thank you for becoming a new member email to all of your new members. Maybe it's a letter from the president of the organization. But how many of you actually harness that honeymoon period with an onboarding strategy? Now, this is a list building strategy, being that we are targeting folks that are new members. We know that they're new members. We're going to actually automate this entire process. So as someone comes on board, as you can see there, I have what we have under the strategy tab here at HighRoad, a welcome program. And you can see here on the left under program structure, I can put my welcome email in there. I can load a second and third message. I can adjust, as you can see in between the top two blocks and the second and third block, the message cadence. So how many days do I want to have in between 1 and 2, and then 2 and 3. And this allows me, again, to really drive engagement for these new members. New members, they're going to open everything that you send them in the first month. They just are. They're trying to feel you out, trying to find out what it is that you guys are going to be sending them. You guys have made promises that you're going to engage with them in a certain way. They're testing that out. They're opening everything that you send them. Why not take advantage of that and ensure that you essentially introduce them to the different value propositions that you offer them? Maybe take them to your online community. Go to the event center. Two very easy ways to introduce them to how to engage with you, additional ways to engage with you. And you can set it up, and as you can see on the right-hand side there for program settings, you can name it, set a start date, and what time of day you want that to be delivered, and poof, it's automated. So now every new member that you get is going to get the welcome message. It's 5 days later in this instance, you're going to get message 2, and then 4 days later, you're going to get message 3. So then that person is officially on board. And if you have a strategy where you have 4, 5, 6 messages that you'd like to send to new members, then that's something that we can do as well. Just let us know if you're not sure how to do that, and we can help you through that process. Okay, so that's kind of low-hanging fruit there, but something that I think everybody should be doing. And everybody that we've talked to and we try to help them get that on board does show great results for their engagement rates for these new members versus members who didn't go through that online or onboarding program. Event messaging. Let's move on to event messaging. So event messaging is also something that we should be hyper relevant about. Now, everybody knows here in the association world that events, and I'd say probably 80% of you guys out there probably fit into this mold, that events make up the lion's share of your revenue for your organization. That's pretty common. So event messaging is super important. How many times do you send an email out that you're just throwing a whole bunch of email over the wall hoping that you're going to get members to sign up? Well, it's really easy to be more targeted with your event marketing. Let's use this real quick example of an on-site. So if you have, like, say, for instance, an on-site where it's a lunch and learn event, you don't want to send an email out to everyone. Say your chapter is the Midwest chapter. You don't want to send something to everyone in the Midwest for this upcoming event that might be, say, in Chicago. And you don't want to necessarily send the email to every one of your members that might be in Chicago or in Illinois, because maybe there's people that are down in Champaign or wherever in Illinois that aren't going to be really wanting to attend a lunch and learn event in Chicago. That's just too far of a drive. What you can do is you can easily go into building a dynamic segment within the platform and choose zip code for the event, and then choose how many miles away from the event you want to target. And that can continue to be your segment as you message to that over and over and over again. And dynamic segments are really powerful because it is essentially a saved query. So if I today build this segment for folks that are 40 miles from the location of the event, but I schedule the message to go out next Thursday, when the message spins up, like a couple minutes before the actual message is scheduled to send, it will notice that the to segment for the message is a dynamic segment. And it will actually run that query at that exact time, build the list, and deploy the message. So anyone who is a new member that's signed up between now and next Thursday morning is going to get this message as well. I'm not going to have to manually go and update that to be able to be more relevant. And I can continue to message to that over and over and over again. I could have this segment saved within the system, and every time I have a Chicago event, I can just message to that. And again, being as relevant as possible with my the folks that I'm inviting. So that's just one example of an on-site, and of course you can take into account a lot of different things. Maybe it's not a on-site, maybe it's a virtual event, and you can use prior email behavior for some things like that, or preferences. But let's talk about annual conference. So again, for most of you guys, events are the major revenue generator for your organization, and by far, the annual conference is typically the largest revenue generator of events. So, and you guys probably send a ton of email around your annual conference. And sometimes, I mean, if you kind of put yourself in the shoes of your members, it can be a little bit overboard. You know, you can see folks just, again, spraying and praying when it comes to their annual conference registration invitations. So I really encourage all of you to build some logic around message tracks. So if you have an original invitation that you're sending out, build some message tracks beyond that. So how do we then talk to folks that have opened but yet have not clicked on the registration link? And how do we go from folks that are opening and clicking on the registration link but not actually registering for the event? And then how do we then talk to our folks that have actually registered for the event? And a lot of you guys are probably doing some of that, but very manually. One of the things that we did for one of our association clients last year that I think had really great success was building some logic behind all of these various message tracks and then scheduling all of those messages and then building the logic within those dynamic segments and then just letting those messages run. And as folks opened and clicked or didn't open and click or registered, they all managed themselves between all of these various message tracks. That is a really smart way of doing this. And if you can integrate that, you can schedule all of those things in advance. You don't have to manually pull lists, make sure that you have the most updated list of everybody who's registered, that sort of thing. You can build that right in the system. So again, build messages based on intel and behavior. So what do you know about these people? What do you know preferences? Do we know something about their content that they want to receive from us? Maybe you want to highlight some of the content that you are offering at the annual conference that you know is going to be in line with what they want to see. So they want to see a certain type of content from you in a newsletter. Why not then highlight that type of content in the annual conference to make sure that they see the value of attending that conference? So the intel that you know about someone should be built into your lists that you are going to use to target them for the event marketing. Also, behavioral stuff. Now, I talked about how we can use behavior for building message tracks before, but if you have an active member that's never been to an event, maybe you treat them a little bit differently. Maybe you try to get them to try an event for the first time. Maybe that person that you know, they attend every year, maybe you don't necessarily market to them as heavily. You know, maybe they would get annoyed by that. So just some thought that you might want to put into that as you kind of build some of your strategies. And everyone should be doing this. I mean, again, being that the event piece is such a huge generator, revenue generator for you guys, everyone should be doing more targeted event marketing stuff. Now, remarketing. Let's talk about how we can actually remarket and build this dynamic segment in real time. So first things first, we can create a couple static segments. We have a list, a static segment list that is everyone who I want to target as a remarketing segment. So anybody who has clicked on the registration link but not yet registered. And then I want to create a static segment again for anybody who has registered. And then all I need to do is go into, when I'm creating the message, I'll see on the Manage and Track Links page the URL for the conference registration page. And then right there where it says Add to Segments, I can go ahead and put that static segment in there for that remarketing campaign. And then I can build a dynamic segment and message to this over and over again that says, give me everybody who's included in that 2015 annual remarketing or 2015 conference. This essentially, again, anyone who's clicked on the registration link is going to be added to that remarketing segment. Then, of course, we want to exclude anyone who's actually in that 2015 annual conference registrants segment. So we don't want to be annoying to folks that have actually clicked on the registration and registered. We just want to really focus on those folks that have clicked on the registration link, but for whatever reason haven't actually jumped in with both feet and registered. So again, just one of many examples of how you can be more targeted with your list around event marketing. Now, let's talk a little bit about in-event marketing or in-event messaging. There aren't a lot of folks that are doing this, and we should really be doing this more, because when your folks are registering, so you have your annual conference, what do people look like when they're standing in that hallway waiting to get their badge? They're all looking down at their phones. They're all looking down at their phones, as you can see in this picture. That is exactly what they're doing. So take advantage of that. Put things in front of them. You know who's attending. You know who's registered. You know who's there. Let's start messaging appropriately to those folks that actually would be on target. And then once the conference starts, they're still looking at their phones. People are just like, doesn't matter what demographic we're talking about, male, female, 25 or 65. Everyone has their phone out looking at their email when they're at a conference. So we want to make sure that we are messaging to them, say, hey, hopefully you enjoyed the party last night. Don't forget the keynote this morning. Things like that. Here's a link to the deck or the presentation from our keynote speaker. Things like that. You want to really kind of fluff up your event because those messages are important. Okay, so let's take a step away from event marketing and let's talk about content. So content distribution is also a huge part of how we want to be more relevant to our members. And it really all starts with an email preference center page. So if you don't have an email preference center page right now, you should. And an email preference center page can be just member or message type. So you can see here for the one that we're showing you here for Bob at MOA, that is member or message type. So they have message types, and they did a great job of not only describing the different types of messages that they have within each category, but also a preview link. So if I'm a member who is deciding, do I want to opt out of this, do I want to opt into this, I can click a preview link and see an example of that type of message. So email preference centers, super important. Now, you can also take that one step further outside of message type and actually put topical areas in there. So if you're an ASAE member, you probably see the Preference Center page on the ASAE site, which we built with them. Because if you don't know, we are doing the messaging for the ASAE. They have a huge list of content areas, topical areas, lots of subcategories under each one. And you can really define what type of content that you want to receive. And then, of course, they use that content. They use that data about you to make sure that they serve up content that you want to see from them. Because really, you want to make sure that you're sending the right content to the right people at the right time. It's really about making sure that, again, we're not crying wolf about our content that we're throwing over the fence to people. We want to be targeted on that. We want to make sure that we know what content they want to receive from us and that we're delivering that up specifically to them. And that then from that, you'll see your open rates, your conversion rates, your engagement rates all going way up into the right because people will start to just trust you that every time they receive an email from you, the content is exactly what they want. And again, let's talk a little bit about the ASAE newsletter because the ASAE actually were automating their newsletter. So this is a product that we can roll out to anyone. Just let us know. It automates the actual newsletter based on not only your topical areas, but how frequently you want to receive it. So for instance, let's say, John Brandt, I have, let's say, 4 topical areas that I like to receive content on. And I've selected on my Preference Center link that I want to receive my newsletter weekly. So the system will identify, hey, John Brandt hasn't received his newsletter in a week. Here's his 4 topical areas of interest. I want to go out, query the content management system, find new content since the last time he received his newsletter within those 4 topical areas, and then take those articles, put them on this preloaded responsive design template, and shoot it out the door. And that is about as cutting edge as it gets when it comes to content marketing. I mean, that is really a one-to-one communication between you and your members. That member could have a completely different newsletter than anyone else that's a member based on their preferences. And the ASAE and HighRoad, we take it one step further too. We actually go and say, okay, so John has this topical area, and this one has 6 subcategories selected. So we know that that's the most important one for him. Let's make sure that that content area is on the top. And let's make sure that that subject line, or the title for that top article in that top section, is actually the subject line for the email itself. So that's super powerful. Again, really being targeted and providing people what they want from you. So that's one example. And if you want to hear more about Newsletter Express, Newsletter Express Plus, then by all means let me know, and we can do a more in-depth demo of that. So making sure that you know what content you, your members want to receive from you, and then using that really will help you drive engagement for your content and everything. So just in recap here, a couple things. Number one, are you listening to your members? Are you actually taking into account what they're saying, either covertly or overtly? So maybe overtly, they're giving you feedback. Are you taking that feedback and doing something with it? And maybe covertly, they are giving you feedback, and are you making adjustments based on that information? So for instance, if you're noticing that a ton of your people are unsubscribing from a certain message type, maybe we should take a look at that message type and find out why people are unsubscribing in droves. So that type of data is something that we can really use to our advantage. And again, stop the spray and pray madness. That's 10 years ago. It really doesn't pay off. You're just throwing money down the drain, just throwing all of your email out to every one of them. You just have to be more targeted. Second one there, are you delivering what you promised? So when someone becomes a member, obviously you're putting your value proposition out in front of them. Are you delivering on that? Are you giving them what you promised? Also, are your invitations relevant? Are you sending invitations to people who want to, or likely going to attend that event? So again, being more relevant with maybe your on-site, being more relevant for your virtual and your big conferences, and making some strategic decisions on who you can target and who you should be targeting and who maybe you should be excluding. Relevant content. Are you sending relevant content, or are you throwing everything over the wall and hoping that your members will open your email and sift through all the articles looking for the one article that they really want? That's only going to last for so long before someone's going to just stop opening and then maybe not become a member or not renew their membership. And do your messages have focus? So again, allowing your messages to be concise, targeted, with a clear call to action in each of them is really important, especially now in the mobile age, as we see more and more people opening up their emails with a mobile device. You have to make sure that you are really focused and really relevant. Otherwise, they're going to delete you before they even read or come close to understanding the call to action within the email. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up with that. If anything that you've heard today is something you want to discuss in greater detail, please let me know, or please let us know here at HighRoad. We love to talk about this stuff. You probably can notice I have a lot of passion about this. It is something that really, I think, has us stand apart from our competitors. We really like to make sure that you guys are successful. So if you're successful, then you're going to be a partner of ours long term. We don't want to be a short-term vendor. We want to be a long-term partner. So let us talk strategy with you guys. And with that, I will actually sign off and hand it back to you, Jennifer.
Thank you for joining us at the U for Subscriber List Decision-Making Framework with John Brandt from HighRoad Solution. This concludes today's program. Have a great day, and you may now disconnect.